Back in the neutral. And uh-oh. She's not going into park. Alright, we're back here working on this RZR 800S. Last video we got the transmission all pulled. And I'm working on draining the fluids, draining the diff right now. I think I'm gonna go ahead and unbolt it up here so it's out of the way. Probably don't have to do that, but I think it's gonna be easier to get at some of them bolts underneath there. I already got the fluid drained in the transmission section. Still fluid in the transfer case up here yet though. And then we'll tear into this guy and see if we can't see what was going on with it. And this diff fluid's definitely gone a long time without being changed. And the fluid that was in the transmission was just as bad. The drain holes here for those, as you can see, there's another one here somewhere, was completely blocked with mud and dirt, so you know it hasn't been changed in a while. Ooh, there's the first little sign of foul play. I think that's a little pin. You'll see when I get in here how this is connected to hold the gears. And I think here's our one little problem right here, is this little pin is what connected the two things. I'll show you here once I get into it. We have major success. I got everything apart. I did have to take the transfer case side apart in order to slide the shaft out because there was C-clips in there that held the shafts together. But anyway, here is what's going on. Here is our shift linkage that connects to our cable. You can see how it's connected to the arm that slides those gears in there to go in and out of either here or down there, depending what gear you're in. Neutral's right here somewhere. And this right here is what our little ball and spring catch to hold the gear. So as you're sliding this, this should be connected to this, and that should be spinning up and down as well. But as you can see here, there's a little hole right there. That's where the pin's supposed to go through that connects this shift arm with this. And that's that little piece I showed you that we found. That was a piece of it. The rest is probably in the bottom, but I'll be cleaning all that up anyway. Now, for some reason, that is really stiff and doesn't want to move. And I even backed off this screw a little bit that puts the tension on the spring. So I'm thinking this probably got hung up or started to get hung up, which made the driver have to then start really jamming it into gear, and that eventually wore on that pin and broke it. So we're gonna go ahead and replace the ball, the spring. We'll get that little pin coming. Hopefully we can get just the pin, don't have to get a whole bunch of stuff. All our seals look good here and here, but I will contact the owner and see if he wants to replace any seals while I'm in here. Now's a good time to do it. But I'll get parts ordered and we'll catch back up with you guys once parts are in and everything is fixed. Hey, welcome back. Parts for this 09 RZR 800S are in. So it's time to get the transmission back together and get everything back in the buggy and get it together. I already got my new seals in here. I've got the other new seal for this side, as well as some new clips, which we'll get to when we're putting everything back together. I replaced the detent ball and the spring in here. However, the little pin that broke and was the cause of all our problems was on back order with no foreseeable time in the future for it to be available. So I took a risk. And the reason why I say I took a risk is because this is cast here, and it's very hard to weld cast iron, cast steel without it cracking. But I did an okay job. I got her tacked in several places around here. So I just went ahead and welded these two fast, so we don't have to worry about that pin anymore. Again, the reason why I didn't do that in the first place is because it can be very tricky to MIG weld cast metals, because it'll be because if you heat it too fast, too quickly, it'll crack and break. If it cools too fast, too quickly, it'll crack and break. So I had to make sure to preheat this good with a torch, tack it, hit it with the torch again, tack it, and so on and so forth. And then when I was done, I had to every so often hit it with the torch so it didn't cool too quick. Hey, it worked. We didn't crack. We are now welded in place, so there's no chance of this ever coming apart again. And it has worked. Of course, I can't show you because it's not secure, but it's working like it should now. So I'm gonna go ahead and reassemble this transmission, and then we'll get her back in the buggy. Well, that was quite the chore, but last night I managed to get the engine, the transmission, and gear case back in. It's bolted firmly in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all the connections hooked up, reinstall the rear suspension so I can drop this down and get it level so we can fill our fluids. And I still gotta drain the engine oil. We're doing a full service too, so the engine oil is getting changed, the front diff is getting changed, and I'll finish draining the rear diff. Although I drained most of it, I'll finish draining it and fill it with new fluids. Finish putting everything back together here, and I'll just cut back in when we're ready to go for a test drive. Well, as you can see, the RZR 800S is all back together. Did end up having to replace the bearings on the rear. They were shot and there was a lot of play. So replaced those, and of course, I think I mentioned this, I don't know if I did or not, but the bushings on the control arms were shot, so we replaced them with Garage Products bushings. The ones on the front have some play, but with the amount of money he spent on fixing this transmission, we'll worry about those come next service. That's what I'm going to recommend them. They're good for now. I filled them with grease. It took most of the slop out of them. This guy has been neglected on service, and the front A-arms were pretty dry, so filling them with grease helped take a lot of that play out of them. Front got new wheel bearings too. Again, a little bit neglected on service. I don't think the bearings on these things had ever been greased. You can see here, I saved this one to show you guys. This is pretty much how all the bearings were. As you can see here, they were bone dry, not a lick of grease in there, so they were all rusted and seized and fell apart on me. So all new bearings in the front end. Of course, all the fluids have now been changed. So let's we'll do a fire up before we go for a test drive here and do a quick little test of the gear shift selector in the shop here and see if we get some good movement and if it's holding gear. All right, first things first, see if this guy will fire up. All right, like nothing. We're in park. Let's go reverse. There's reverse. And we got reverse. Neutral. We are in neutral. Low. Right in. High. Right in. Low. From high. neutral. And uh-oh. She's not going into park. I think I know why. She's not wanting to push into reverse either. Alright. So it went the whole way back into gear, but coming up it wouldn't hit reverse or neutral, or I mean reverse or park. I think I know exactly what's going on. Let's go take a look at the throttle cable. I think that's our issue. Yep, you guys see how this is bent? That's an issue with these 800 RZRs. The cable part actually goes into some kind of sleeve in under this boot that makes it rigid enough that it can push. See, I can easily get it by hand. It went right into park there. So this throttle cable needs replaced. That shaft, I know it's an issue with these, it tends to split and then it doesn't hold the cable rigid enough to push. And when you try to push it, the cable just bends. So that's an easy fix with the new throttle cable, probably around 20 to 30 bucks. I'll get one ordered, be here in a couple days. 15-minute job to swap out the throttle cable or the shift cable. So once we do that, then we can go for a proper test drive. But other than that, everything seems good. All right, we got the new throttle cable installed. So, oh boy, these heat belts don't work. So I think it's time to go for a quick little test drive here. Here's reverse. That's working. Neutral. Low. Perfect. High. Perfect. Now here's the trick. Back into park. Perfect. Let's take her out for a little spin. Here between gears a time or two. Back into low. Let's hit reverse. From reverse, let's go into high. Though I can tell this doesn't have power steering. Not that it's hard to steer, but it feels heavy compared to newer machines. Shot and dry rotted. They're the original 2009 tires. But the owner's going to bring some fresh rubber with him. We're going to throw on real quick and we'll call this project done. know, these 08 razors are probably the best razor that players came out with as far as dependability. They weren't pushing the crazy power like these modern turbo machines. Things didn't break as often on them. Yes, they had their quirks here and there, such as the fuel gauge is flashing here, which is a thing these RZR 800s just did. Voltage issues with their fuel pump. Sending unit. For almost 3,500 miles, this RZR is still up and running pretty good. All right, let's check our shift new cable here. Probably is going to need adjusted after a little bit of riding because this cable will stretch a little bit. But other than that, this 09 RZR 800 is still running like a champ now. It's shifting good and smooth. It's holding gear like it should. So I'd say another AMR Power Sports job, well done.